Good. So welcome everyone. You are attending the 7th episode of Meet the Graduate series. My name is Serban Toader. I'm a doctoral graduate of the EDBA program of Ponts Business School. And I will discuss today with Dr. Anne Isabelle Sam about her research and doctoral journey. We'll discuss about 30 minutes about Anne Isabelle's research and doctoral journey, followed by a Q&A session for about 15 minutes, where the participants can please use the chat feature of Zoom under everyone chat, because I would like to be able to see the question. So to clarify, Ponts Business School is the business school affiliated with École des Ponts, which is one of the oldest and most prestigious Grande École in Paris, France. EDBA stands for Executive Doctorate in Business Administration, which is a practice-based doctoral program addressed to senior professionals, aiming to combine their unique professional experience with the rigor of academic research. So today it is my pleasure to welcome Dr. Anne Isabelle Sam. Born and raised in France, Anne Isabelle has made an impressive career in human resources. She has over 20 years of HR and leadership experience and is currently based in Bangkok, Thailand with her family. Anne Isabelle has worked in places such as Beijing, Hong Kong, Singapore, Shanghai, and now in Bangkok for listed, but also family-owned companies in sectors as diverse as hospitality, packaging and manufacturing, and agriculture. A naturally curious person, Anne Isabelle has certifications in coaching and neuroscience. She's an advisory board certified chair, and this is interesting, she is looking forward to complete her hypnotherapist certification next year in 2023. Anne Isabelle just completed her executive doctorate on leaders transformation, and the title of her dissertation was The Ability to Adapt and Evolve, How Leaders Transform Under Uncertainty. This is certainly a fascinating topic and very, very relevant and timely. After 2 years of pandemic, now a war in Europe, for sure, in a world in turmoil, people, organization, I would say humanity turns to leaders who can deal with the lack of structure and visibility, but at the same time, take responsibility to inspire people to move on. This is easier said than done. It is not easy because leaders are people. They are human like you and me, so they are going through a lot of emotions which are not always visible. So without further ado, Anne Isabelle, welcome to the webinar. I look forward to our conversation. So why don't you start by quickly describing what your research is about?
Good morning, Serban. Good morning, everyone. Good evening, depending on where you are. My topic actually, in non-academic terms, I used to call it the space where magic happens. Obviously, for academia, it's not really, it's too poetic. So it's actually about transformation, about how do we as leaders transform, what's going on, what's happening when we transform or when we adapt or evolve. For me, uncertainty is only a context. I started before COVID. So COVID was actually an opportunity, to, maybe for leaders to reflect more. When I interviewed them last 6 months after COVID started. But the core of the topic is really what's going on when we transform. What magic is happening?
Anne Isabelle, I would like to go more deeply into your research, so we'll come back to that. And I have many questions. Your topic is really fascinating. But before going into your research, can you perhaps start by taking us through the reflexivity process of choosing the topic? Because there might have been many topics you might have been interested before you started the program. So was this topic, the choice of this topic, triggered by something coming from, I mean, why did you choose this topic? What did it came from your personal and professional life?
It's a combination of two things. First, like you said earlier, I'm curious. I'm curious to understand the alchemy of the magic. So that's one. That's my driver, curiosity. The other thing, more from a business perspective, working in HR, I see sometimes people who get stuck, who quote unquote don't move. And I was when I had to implement a few projects like changing the bonus scheme, for example, I was like, why is it that always the same people, those guys don't move? Basically, there's no change. So from a business perspective, I was intrigued by what's going on there. So it's a combination of personal and also business. As you know, change, whether it's environment or whether it's change we want to drive as an organization or as leaders is important. And it's, you know, how do we take people along?
You notice, and you gave this example of your professional experience with colleagues who might have not changed while, you know, they should have changed. And I also noticed similar situations. I mean, they are quite frequent where people in management position take, let's say, a myopic and a short-term perspective. But in my experience, they're not irrational because managers are motivated by their immediate results. So I feel I'm going a little bit off script here, but I really have to ask you that. So is there a problem with the individuals who did not change when they were supposed to change? Or is there a problem with the organization whose culture could induce that sort of behaviors?
The answer is both. Part of the journey, actually, for the school, you have two choices. You can do either 3 articles or a dissertation. So I chose the dissertation, not the articles. So dissertation enabled me to go really in depth. So basically spending 6 months to read everything that was written about change, transformation, leaders from a theoretical framework. So, and once you read everything that was written, you can bring your own, I mean, whatever findings you have, it would be your contribution to the topic. So from what I've read, there's obviously organizations want to drive change. Most of the time it doesn't work. And there's also leaders who want to drive or who cannot drive. So it's both individual and organization. So that's why when I structured my research, I looked actually at 3 theories from the one called dynamic capability, doesn't really matter, but the macro, if you want, complexity. And then individual level, I look at the adult development theory, which is called constructive development, which is how do we make sense of what's happening to us? So I wanted to have that lens to filter what's happening in organization, complexity, environment, and then down to leader, and then interview leaders and see what are the findings that I have from my discussions with them, analyzing everything.
And can you please clarify why do you think this topic is important for you? Why did you choose it? I mean, why was it important for you and for leaders, of course?
For me, like I say, it's magic. It's alchemy. I like to see, to understand what's going on there. For leaders, it's, you work in an organization, it's all about making it sustainable, competitive. So how do we do that? How do we remain sustainable and competitive? And one of the elements is adapting to the environment inside the company and all of that. So, and ourselves and the people. Adapting to the market, to the customers. So, and that's why it's important. You have to adapt. Yes.
And especially in an environment like this, we mentioned about uncertainty and people being forced to adapt. And in the past two years and more than 2 years, but this lockdown and work from home situation have led many people to revalue a lot of their values and lives and professional work, and of course their expectation, our expectations and beliefs we have about leaders and leadership have changed. So given all this, what would leaders and organizations find useful in your research?
There's actually, I would say there's two things. The first one, my findings, and are you okay if I put one slide, by the way? I have 2 slides.
Yes.
You want to see some visual, because it helps. One is about what's going on, and then the other one is how, what's happening. So how do you adapt?
Yeah, I think it's useful to put the slide. You just share the screen and
let me just put. Let me just put one slide quickly, and don't worry, I know you guys most probably see lots of slides day in, day out. So, but basically this slide is about what's going on. So obviously top of the line is what you see, below the line is what you don't see. The key challenges are about emotion. Mm-hmm. All the stuff you see in gray, this is all the emotion going on. And deep down, you can see in red fear. There's fear, there's shame, there's fear of being unfair, dealing with the unknown, failing, not being competent, being weak. So all of that is going on. So there's an issue with actually a struggle with emotions. And the other thing going on is a struggle in terms of decision-making, what you see here. Decision-making have to be much faster. It's not about the plan because it's all uncertain. So how do we deal with this? What you see in purple and in pink here is actually the way they manage. I interviewed 11 participants, and then of course data is analyzed and all of this, but the way they actually manage is this one: more empathy, more trust, togetherness. Diverse team is not necessarily gender diverse, is listening to people they would not listen to most of the time, and then being more inclusive, listening to different opinions, different skills, because at the end here the key message for leaders, what I've heard is, I don't know. I have no more idea, no more landmark, if you wish, or bearings of what is performance.
Now, yeah. Okay. Go on for this, and then I will.
So, yes. So this is what is going on now. How they actually cope, how they actually adapt with with the teams in the system. The key things are same. Emotions, as you can see, are changing. It's about more empathy, more heart emotions, much more intuition. There's a struggle here. The interesting bit is they have to manage the tension. They have to manage their own emotion, but they also feel the other's emotion, which is called emotion contagion. So, how do I manage all of that? So that's a push and a pull here. But there's also a more acute sensitivity to the environment. So it's more listening to a different part of themselves, if you wish. And in what they do, all of them, I was actually surprised, absolutely all of them, they say it's about learning. I asked a few questions in my interview on, development you've done in your career. The development for them that worked was not the training they did, but it was more personal development, and also anything that relates to a group or to a community or these kind of things. And it's all about learning, moving fast, and very important, experimenting. So learning on the fly, learning new things, self-awareness, and the ability to improvise on the go with the team. Learn on the go and then build those new skills. So a key takeaway here is actually not really who is the leader, because at the end of the day, it was kind of a collective leadership, if you wish. But for me, the key takeaway was, what is leadership? What is the, maybe something about, you know, the story that you know as a kid, the emperor is naked. All this role or uniform you wear as a leader is removed under uncertainty. So that's really why it came very strong as a takeaway. This is all gone, and what is left is actually who I am as a person and how I work with my team, listening to intuition, environment, and like one of the participants said, it's learning to move when the lights are orange. It's not about controlling the plan and making sure everything is, you know, perfect. So in a nutshell, this is the findings.
Yes, I would like to explore them a little bit more. And I have to confess that I read with interest your dissertation. And what you said before, but also what I noticed in your dissertation is the following. So under uncertainty, you know, volatile, uncertain context as we have now, there is no place for leaders to hide. So they have to remove the mask, and the people could see them the way they are. Yeah,
yes, absolutely.
I quite like the way you expressed it earlier, whether the emperor is naked or not. So this uncertainty is really a big factor in making the leaders more transparent, in the sense of people are the leadership and their style is more it's demystified now, so it's all in the open now, and people could see both the positive side and maybe the dark side of the leader, because in general, you know, leaders might put a mask to look good. Yeah. You know, I quite like this idea about the emperor, meaning the leader is naked or not, and what is left. Yeah. Can you perhaps, going back to your research, can you help us understand better their perspective? I mean, what did the leaders in your research, what did they do to deal with this situation?
First, not everybody, I would say less than half, admitted that most of the time they were not really honest, or they were telling people what they wanted to hear. Okay, so, but some people, I mean, yeah, some leaders actually said so. And basically, what they did was to listen more, like I shared just now, more empathy, listening to people they would most of the time not listen to, can be lower levels, can be different functions, can be other countries. So being more inclusive in beyond the usual circle. So that's what they did. And then experimenting and learning. And learning is not attending a class. It's really learning from mistakes, from experiments, from other different opinions, figuring it out. It's not about making it perfect. It's about it's not about managing the plan, you know, it's leading the possible, like one of the articles says. It is about leading what is possible. We don't know everything, that's fine. We're going to figure it out. And there is a key word, which is faith. We trust, and there is a faith that we're going to figure it out. A few of them, some of them were in China. Back then it was very uncertain with the issue with the US. So a few of them, actually the China ones, told me that they were much more listening to the market, to things they would not usually not pay attention to. So more acute intuition, you could say, listening to something else than just the Excel they see most of the time.
And because this doctoral program has a very strong managerial and practical element, I actually wanted to ask you, what did you learn from your research and from the whole EDBA academic, I would say, process that you personally could apply at work as a leader and as a human resource senior specialist?
Yeah, the first thing I learned immediately, like in the first 2 months, was, you know, running meetings. What is the problem we're trying to solve? Because my supervisor was hammering this to me. You look at the solutions, you don't even identify the problem first. Okay, so that's something I use in meetings many times. What is the problem we're trying to solve? Another thing that I really learned is to go really deep. What is called the ability to really focus for 5 hours, just, you know, focus and get it done. It's useful. For example, I had to do something super boring, like putting some governance in a, I mean, how boring is that? They just wanted a high level, and I did all the details. I said, oh, how did you do it? Because you can basically very quickly, you read so much, you develop the ability quite quickly to go deep, to discriminate what is not relevant, to go to the essential, and then to make it, to summarize, if you want, you know, what does it all mean, and put it together. And then it's giving you like a, I don't know if it's superpower, but it's giving you the ability to really do things very deep, very quickly. I also learned on a personal front, it is a learning, because literature review it's super interesting, but it's also super dry. You know, you read some articles are quite boring, some are super interesting, and then you get lost. And then for 6 months I didn't do anything. I was just like, couldn't do anything, couldn't process anything anymore. So I've learned to be okay with that. It's okay, I worked very hard for 6 months, I haven't done anything in 6 months, fine. So I've learned to deal with guilt, because you feel guilty, but then you don't feel guilty anymore. And then the last one is feedback. The supervisor is giving you some pretty direct feedback, which is actually, it's fun. Like, this is not literature, this is, you know, academic writing. Okay, so not to take it personal, it's actually very important. So I really welcome feedback now. It's a good opportunity to do it, to do better and to improve. So that's there's lots of learnings actually that are very useful for day-to-day life. And the last one, I would say, the ability, maybe sometimes at the end it's a bit insane. Some things are like, really, you know, comments on comma and punctuation and this kind of stuff. But that's also useful. Like, now I'm dealing, for example, with some people in legal, and they have the same comments about punctuation. I say, good, I can manage. So patience to deal with all sort of comments, including punctuation.
I actually, while listening to you, I took some notes, and I have a lot of questions for you, and there are some questions in the chat already, so we'll have an interesting Q&A session. I mean, having a person with your experience and now research ability, we should not let her leave easy. So I look forward for the Q&A session. But before Q&A, I wanted to, you know, just to wrap up the research, but we'll come back to the research. If there is one key takeaway for decision makers and leaders coming from your research, what would that be?
When I did my defense, one of the professors asked me, is leadership dead? And of course, he asked me the question because he wrote an article about it, which is quite interesting, by the way. But I didn't expect that question. And to some extent, I think it's more, and I'm a leader as well, right? It's more to reflect on what is leadership and what sort of, how do I want to be, how I am as a person. It's not really uncertainty, but for, yeah, how to say it, who I am and how I am as a leader. People see through it anyway. So, you know, why not just showing it and being myself? It's okay. And it's okay to experiment, to fail, to do all of this, because this is actually what makes us survive when it's uncertain. And this is how we adapt and how we change, by experimenting, failing, listening to different people, learning, you know, not knowing. So yeah, focus on that.
So let's switch gears for now, but of course we'll come back to that. And I'm really glad to see all the activity we have in the chat and the Q&A. But let's discuss a little bit about your doctoral journey, because I'm curious. You took a decision at this moment in your professional career and even personal life to do a doctoral program, an EDBA. Why did you do that, and why did you choose this EDBA program?
Many years ago, I did EMBA already. EMBA is good, it's giving you the breadth, so you can learn a lot of stuff, you know, horizontal. EDBA was for me the opportunity to go in depth, to go deep into something that I'm curious about. And I did it, like I said, because I like to learn, I'm curious, and I also, honestly, sometimes, you know, a lot of HR conversation are quite frustrating. So I wanted something more interesting to read and to learn. And yeah, so I wanted more depth. So that's why I chose this one. I picked Ponts because it's a well-known school. I think Napoleon built it, you know, established it 200 years ago. So it's well known in France, at least. It was flexible. There were 4 sessions face-to-face in Paris. And then after that, you do your articles. The options of doing articles or doing a thesis was also good. So I think it was a good balance. Small cohort, around 19 people. So that worked for me.
You completed the program in about 4 years, which is about the average time to complete doctorate program. I'm sure you are very happy about graduating. Most of the participants in a doctorate program drop out, so you successfully completed. And I know personally that this is an up and down question. So I was curious, and maybe you can share this with with the audience today. What did you enjoy and find challenging during this 4 years period?
What I enjoy was the relationship with my supervisor. Once the face-to-face was done. It was brief, but to the point, very sharp, very edgy. I enjoy reading those 1,000 articles, believe it or not. There's very good ones, there's bad ones, but I enjoyed it. I really love talking to real human beings, to participants, and analyzing the data, which I've never done before. So that's what was frustrating was the nonsense, you know, fixing punctuation, okay, fine. The process you have to go through, and you waste a lot of time with iteration on punctuation. But that's, you know, it's part of the game, so why not?
Do you feel you are a different person now after these 4 years of struggle and enjoyment as well?
Yes. I would say, what is the source for this? You know, whenever people present something, that's like, what's going on here? What's the source? And then a lot of things that I read, I'm like, come on. So more not critical eye, but more, yeah, we could say more critical perspective on things. And also, I would say the most important is, you just don't know. There's always something to learn, and there's always something to contribute. So you know, so that's okay. All
right. So with this, Anne Isabelle, we go to the Q&A session. I really look forward to it. And the first question actually comes from me. Yeah. So, but of course, I also took a look on all the questions that we had there. So my question is the following. So I know how it was. So you did the research. You did a very comprehensive literature review. You looked at all these theories, then you had the interviews, you collected the data, you analyzed the data, you come up with the findings. And at some point, I imagine you step back And I'm actually very, very intrigued and curious about this. So when you step back, have you had this impression of, boy, I did not expect that? Were there any findings that that you obtained that you did not expect?
Yes, because honestly, before the interview, I did not have any bias or any. I was so tired after the lead review. I was blank. So it was good, totally neutral. I didn't have any preconceived ideas. So I had no expectations. For me, the fact they all came back with diversity, listening, I didn't even think of it, honestly. I was like, really? The whole thing on emotions? I'm like, huh? Is that such an issue? Yes. A lot of things going on around fear, shame. I did not expect people to be so open to share this. And also the fact that all the training and learning you do in organization don't really have an impact. I expected more, yeah, a different result there. But quite a lot of honesty from my participants. So I was actually very moved by some of the things they shared.
That's interesting, and let's move now to the Q&A. And there are questions in the Q&A and also in the chat. So what I will do, I will take one from Q&A, one from the chat, because I would like to give the opportunity to everybody to listen to you. And the first question comes from Miriam, and Miriam asked you whether you did you see any gender difference in your research in dealing with uncertainty. Are the female leaders better?
See, I knew somebody would ask me this question. I knew it would be you, Miriam. Miriam is a colleague. So that's why I went back to read my thesis last weekend. So honestly, there was no difference between men and women. I had 4 women and 6 men. The only very subtle difference is the women, when they were talking about their colleagues, because one thing is, for leaders, they are not really leaders, somebody else is also their leader, okay? But when they were talking about colleagues or peers, only the women, for some reason, included themselves in that group. The man did not. For the man, it was them and then the colleagues. Women were part of the colleagues. So that's the only very subtle difference I noticed. Other than that, no, nothing.
Okay.
Nothing. Just one thing, by the way, the participants I choose were more or less people around 20 years experience, all in dynamic markets, Middle East, Africa, Asia, nothing in America and Europe. So more or less the same, different industries. So more or less the same experience, so to speak.
Right. The next one comes from Gary Decker, I assume another colleague of yours.
Ex-colleague in the US.
Colleague,
really?
okay.
What time is it for you, Gary?
And his question is, what do you see as some of the key drivers that are opening leaders' eyes to need for transformation? So the question is about the key drivers which are pushing the leaders to realize, to acknowledge the need for transformation.
Honestly, from there's some stuff in literature, obviously, but from from the people I interviewed, it's mostly external. It's mostly coming from customers or markets or politics. I had a lot of, because of the politics between China and US, therefore we have to transform. It was mostly external. It was not really internal, either themselves or within the organization. It was mostly coming from the outside to justify, if you want, the need to transform. Nobody came with an intrinsic driver, no.
But somehow linked to your response, it's the next question coming from Guido Milner. Sorry for my pronunciation. So you might have leaders who want to change, And you might have leaders who do not want to change, and you might have leaders who do not even realize the need that they have to change or do not understand. So what is the best way for leaders to acknowledge and understand and take responsibility for the change?
Yeah, that's actually the reason why I started, right? Because one of my leaders was like, this guy is not budging. The key word, what I've learned from them is self-awareness, is awareness, is being aware of yourself, obviously, your limits, your team. And also in that case, uncertainty is good because it's removing a lot of the noise, and it's putting everybody kind of the same level. Nobody knows. We all don't know. We have to figure it out. So you are not the leader, the superhero, right? The heroic leader over there. You don't know anything. You are exactly the same level than the others. So, but you have to be aware of how to use it, what it means for you, and all of that. Some people struggled. Some people were still looking for tools. I had a few of them asking me, oh, I don't have a tool anymore. How do I manage? I'm lost. And others were actually thriving. Oh, we're just experimenting, we're learning, it fails, it doesn't work, and it works. So different styles. So yeah, that's what I found in from my research. But there's a lot of literature, Guido, on the topic.
And Anne Isabelle, these leaders, of course, they're individuals, but these individuals do not operate in a box. Yeah, they operate in a social environment. Generally, it is their organization. And of course, the organization is really important in all these conversations. So the question we have from Julia Cookard is about organizations and how organization can support the leaders and facilitate their transition. How can they help them continue to be relevant on a permanent basis? And what are the cultural factors? You know, with this, I take you back to the initial discussion about is it the individual or is it the organization? You responded both, but perhaps now you can go more into detail about the organization. So, role.
Yes. So what I found is actually the organization. Very often, what they do, they just send people to some training program, leadership development, and you're done. And again, my leaders, they say, well, okay, it's good, but you know what had the most impact was more the community they built from that program, rather than the program itself. So the community, they also find it, for some of them who didn't do leadership development, they did like group outside of work. So that's how they got their own learning and development, and it's that kind of group thing. So that's one of the things organization can do. But I would say the critical one, again, coming from what I found, is more the giving the time to reflect. What does it mean? Because a lot of what I found from the participants is actually about letting go. It's not that I know everything, I'm the leader. No, it's more, I don't know, but we'll figure it out. So it's how do we allow this psychological safety? As you know, a lot of organizations, there's no psychological safety, there's fear to perform. Here we are losing all bearing of performance. So how do we create that safe space where actually we can experiment and fail and learn and all grow together? And something, of course, they all mention creativity, innovation as an outcome. That's how it comes. You don't get creative, you know, because you have 1 hour between 2 and 3 p.m. on a Saturday afternoon. So it's giving that space, that safe space. That's critical for organization to, which only very few do actually. Yeah. Culture, I'm not sure what you mean by culture. If it's country culture, it was not really addressed. So I didn't really consider that.
I know from your dissertation and I quite like the next question coming from Ranjani Arvind, but I would like to put it somehow in the context of your dissertation. One of the theories that you covered during your literature review was the constructive developmental theory. Yeah, Robert Keegan and his stages, yeah, of development and how leadership it's a process.
It's about adult development. Yeah.
So how leadership is embedded in the adult development of the individuals and how they mature in time. And once they mature, they acquire more experience, and let's call it, as Ranjani called it, wisdom. And I think you also had it in your dissertation. People who you put them under uncertainty, they accumulate experience, but are the leaders with more experience and more wisdom better leaders?
No. There was no. Again, I think the maximum seniority or work experience was someone who had 37 years, if I remember. So it was, yeah, between 20 to 37 years. No, there was no difference. It's more, Keegan's theory, adult development is about meaning making. How do you make sense of what's happening to you? All the stresses of life, COVID or crisis and all of that. How do you make sense from that? And how do you grow? Basically, your mind is expanding, if you wish. So it's more about that rather than age or gender, or no, it's not really.
Because once you mature, once you accumulate experience, your pattern recognition model gets better. So once you've seen things happening in the past, isn't it easier for you as a leader to deal with uncertainty?
Yes. So a few of them, yes, absolutely. So a few of them said, I don't recognize the patterns anymore. I'm losing all my bearings. I don't recognize, it's totally new. Nobody knows. And that's what I've heard. I forgot how many, I have to check, but that's what I've heard a lot. I don't recognize, I cannot find anything familiar. Everything is unknown and new. I have to figure out something else to work it. And by the way, there's a name for that. It's called adaptive. An adaptive challenge or adaptive leadership is about, it's about changing your mindset. COVID is a good example of that, of becoming adaptive. You have to change your mindset of the way you approach and you do things.
Anne Isabelle will end with a terrific question, also coming from your colleague Miriam, which is, do you recognize yourself in your research, in the findings of your research?
What a lovely question, Miriam. I think it's like a journalist. You have the answer in the question. I see there's a few more though. I see some question in the chat. Do we still have time or not?
Yes. Okay. Yes. So there are more, indeed, more questions in the chat. So you mentioned.
What is the magical moment from Audrey?
Yes, you mentioned about the magic. We all love magic, Anne Isabelle. So what was the magical moment for you?
Yes, the magical moment was when all those leaders I spoke to were just human beings and basically telling me, well, you know what, it's about listening to my intuition and going more into my heart to have more empathy and include and listen to other people and trust, have faith. That was really magic moments, actually, from most of them.
That's fascinating. So there was also a question that I had on my list of questions, but I see there is also a comment. Perhaps you can discuss about it. That also came from your research. So what you mentioned in your research is that what changed for leaders, there are two things. One is self-awareness. you know, like empathy and strong mind and resilience and all the other comments that the participants in your research had. But on the other side, it's also the innovation. So you had both the self-awareness and innovation, you know, like being agile and the adaptation and learning and stuff. Can you discuss about it?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not sure what you want me to discuss. This is what came as the ability, if you want, the ability to learn and improvise quickly, learn on the go. You got to be fast, not fast, but learn on the go, adapt, right? So let go of your old, doesn't really matter. This is new stuff, build new skills and be aware of what's happening, the people, yourself. The critical thing also is those emotions. Those emotions were really hampering decision making. So what do I mean? What did they point to when they were talking about awareness is because of emotional what do you call it, contagion. You know, they all wanted to manage, not all, but most wanted to manage others, but they also had to manage themselves. There's a lot going on there. Well, you know, what if all of us, not only as a leader, but, you know, we learn how to manage better our emotions and be at peace with emotions and go through them. And that can be, I think, a very good, I mean, leaders mentioned that was an issue for them. So it's actually okay. Emotions are existing in organizations, as we can see if you look at politics, right? It's not only rational. So maybe to use them in a better way.
So people could see that leaders are humans and they have emotions, and there is no more mask and there are no more superheroes, right? So they are individuals. Yep. And once this uncertainty and volatile situation happens, they become self-aware and everybody becomes aware about the leaders. But at the same time, they still have to have results, right? And they still have to lead the organization and inspire the people. And you mentioned innovation, yeah? So do you feel that uncertainty is a factor which is driving innovation?
Yes, it was coming from all of them. Learning, creativity, innovation. Absolutely. Absolutely. It's an outcome, it's a baby, if you wish. But this happens with faith and trust and not taking risk, but experimenting, letting go.
But that's a very positive conclusion. That's a very positive conclusion, isn't it, Anne Isabelle? So we should expect a lot of innovation and creativity coming over from this difficult situation, right, that we have. So on this optimistic note, because we are at the end of, and I don't know how all these minutes passed, we are at the end of our webinar. So I wanted to give you the opportunity. Of course, we only have like 45 minutes, but is there anything in your research that we might have not discussed, but you think that it is really, really important to highlight here as a concluding remark?
No, I would say a concluding remark as a summary that it's actually from one of the article. We are all leaders here, right, in today's calls. So guys, it's about leading the possible rather than managing the plan. So leading the possible or even the impossible. How is that? Isn't that cool? Isn't that a fun and exciting and amazing and uncertain? Yes, of course. But that's yeah. I think it's a very different, feeling than. And there's a silver lining as well, definitely, of COVID and uncertainty. Absolutely, it's an opportunity to become more adaptive, to open the mind and do things differently, and open the hearts and the intuition that maybe, usually we would put in a back burner. And now, most of the leaders I interviewed, they referred more to that as a way to lead, to manage.
on this very positive and optimistic note, I wanted to thank you so much, Anne Isabelle, for sharing your research.
Thank you.
Congratulations on your doctoral degree, Dr. Anne Isabelle Sam. And best of luck in your next professional adventures. By the way, people who want to contact you about your research, they can use your LinkedIn address.
Yep.
Yeah, so you're on LinkedIn, so people can contact you there. So thank you all for participating in this very lively and live webinar. This would also be available later on YouTube. Many thanks to Joanne Lee and the Ponts Business School team who made this and other webinars possible. Have a wonderful April, everyone, and a wonderful spring, and stay tuned to the Ponts Business School social media channels for the following events. Thank you. Goodbye.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you for coming. Thank you, Serban.